Good morning, everybody. I can see that nobody else is coming down the Galeria and that there are members of the public that are in committee rooms 1 and 2. So this room is full today and I welcome you all. There are many of you here who have given submissions during the 5 days of hearings, and we got to understand and know each other a little better. But before we begin the meeting this morning, I'm going to ask Councillor Trevor Maxwell if you would say our karakia, please.
Tuatahi ke te mea, kia koe te manukura. Greetings to who worship the Mayor. Aku whanaunga o Te Arawa. Greetings, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My pleasure to do the karakia in Maori, and then in keeping with my strong Scottish ties, I'll do it in English. E te atua kaharawa, ko koe te tohu rangatira, te tohu mātauranga, manakitia mai mātau o pōnanga i tēnei pō, e mahi nei a mātau mahi o te paenga o ngā tāngata o te kaunihera o Rotorua. Tuko a mai ki a tau, te rangi Māori ki runga i a mātou i ngā wā katoa. Ko ihu karati hoki tō mātou ariki, āmene. And now in English. Almighty God, who alone is the leader of all mankind and the fountain of all knowledge, send thy blessing upon your servants this this morning, as we strive to do all things good for the betterment of the people of the Rotorua district. May we be tolerant in ourselves at all times, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. And I now call for any apologies, and there appear to be none. So we won't put that to the vote. Are there any declarations of interest?
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Councillor Sturt.
Madam Chair, I'm going to refer to my notes because I think it's appropriate, given all the information and the literature that we've been given over the last couple of weeks, that I refer to some notes. Madam Mayor, I raised to a point of order in regards to the legal advice paper presented to councils last week at the P&F meeting last Wednesday, when issues concerning councillor predetermination, perceived bias and the legal need for an open mind were raised with us. In that report, all councillors were asked to consider if their actions during the process of the consultation have impacted on their ability
Councillor
to make...
Sturt, is this a point of order?
It is. It's a point of clarification, actually, because I'm seeking advice from you, Your Worship, that the legal advice that was given to us, all councillors have had an opportunity to make a declaration to you that they meet the test that legal advice gave us. And can you therefore, Madam Chair, please tell us whether any councillor has declared to you or to the CEO, because of the literature, press statements in association with the Pro-Democracy Society, as per the legal advice that was presented to us last week, that predisposition has been made clear to you or the CEO?
Thank you, Councillor Sturt. Well, issues of, I will clarify this, as per our legal advice that all councillors received. Issues of conflict and predetermination are for us as individual councillors to consider and satisfy ourselves that they've been taken notice of, that they have taken due account of legal notice and will ultimately be judged on their own merits. So that is the legal advice for all councillors to have taken on board. I hope that clarifies your point. Are there any conflicts of interest to be declared? There appear to be none. We move now to the confirmation of minutes. Do I have a seconder? Seconder, Councillor Donaldson, that the minutes of the council meetings on the 30th of April, 1st, 5th, 6th, 11th of May be confirmed as a true and correct record. All those in favour? So, contrary? Carried. I'm now going to outline for members present how we're going to conduct this meeting. It's just so that it's clear for everybody. Please use your microphones because there will be live streaming to those that are sitting in rooms 1 and 2. I have made a decision that recommendation 1, all items 1 through to 6 will be dealt with individually. So we will take one at a time. I'm aware that some councillors previously indicated they wanted a really wide-ranging debate, and I think this is the fairest way to achieve a wide-ranging debate, but I will not be suspending standing orders at all, but councillors will be given 5 minutes to speak on each item. Now there are 6 items, so that's going to allow each councillor 30 minutes each of speaking time. I think that is fair and reasonable, and that is my ruling on the suspension of standing orders. I will also be noting, it's so that it's fair and equitable, all councillors who debate, I will be marking off so that I can see that that is fair for all to have up to their allocation of 30 minutes each in total. So that will be marked by myself as I try to keep account of proceedings. I'm also aware that this has been a complicated process, and I'm going to allow councillors to refer to their notes when speaking. Many submissions came that many of us may want to use in our speaking time from across all submitters. So I'm very relaxed for councillors to be able to refer to their notes. It's so that they make sure that they are covering off each point that is covered in items 1 to 6. So I wanted to make that conduct of this committee really clear to everybody. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the interests of all those who are not present in this room and those who are not so good at hearing, could I ask that Your Worship direct that councillors be excused from rising to speak so that we are closer to the microphones?
Very good idea, Councillor Kent, and I think that will make it so much easier for people because we're all shuffling relevant bits of paper, and when we stand, that request was so that all in the Galleria and the meeting rooms can hear the proceedings. Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Point of clarification, please. With recommendation 1 on page 157, 3B, are we going to treat 1, 2 and 3 as one item, or are we going to split that particular item up?
Item 3 will be taken as one, so that will be A and B, 1, 2 and 3. And as reports are given by Jean-Paul Gaston, we are going to open for clarification, because a lot of people will want clarification, and that will be wide-ranging. I also do want to mention to all of you here that sitting with, he's not staff, but sitting over on my far left is Lachlan Muldowney, who is Council's legal advisor. He won't be participating. There may be a time that we call for clarification and have to request council officers to ask Lachlan for advice that helps you as councillors in your deliberation. So welcome Lachlan this morning. Councillor Rokawate.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Your Worship, will we be given an indication that when 4 minutes is up? It's quite helpful. We're trying to speak, and it would be quite helpful if that was available to us.
Thank you. Yes, Rick will be giving that indication at 4 minutes. Do you want the little ding? It seemed to
Any
work.
ding will do.
Any
A dong. Thank you.
Councillor Maxwell.
One other thing, Te Manukura, Mayor, could you introduce all the people at the top table for the benefit of our people that are in this chamber as well as in the other rooms? I think that would be helpful.
Nice, and I do trust that the live stream is working out to the chamber. We have to assume that. On my left is Rick Dunn, who will be giving us advice. He's from the governance section and will be giving me advice when I need clarification. I'll turn to him and we'll do it in a very orderly fashion. On my right is our Chief Executive, Jeff Williams, and on Jeff's right is Carol Peden, who is, for the purposes of today, our committee clerk. And I think that's us. Right. Now we move to staff reports. Did we put the motion on the minutes? I think we did. Yep, we did. So staff reports, if we can move to recommendation 1. I call for a mover. Second, thank you. And now I introduce John Paul Gaston, who's sitting there. We have to put this to the vote, that we receive it. Yeah. All those in favour of receiving the report, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Yes. Yeah. I am going to move the next 4.2, that Council acknowledge the assistance of Te Arawa Working Party, the former members of Te Arawa Standing Committee, and Te Arawa in developing the Te Arawa Partnership model, and the significant contribution that all submitters have made to the consultation process. Thank you, Councillor Gould. I just want to speak to this item briefly, if I may, as the mover of the motion, and then I'll call for other questions from the floor. I want to thank Te Arawa, especially the Standing Committee. In effect, their job was made particularly difficult because the Te Arawa Standing Committee was suspended when we looked as a new council at the structure and which committees we would have. It was very difficult for an elected Te Arawa Standing Committee to be suspended until we decided what the right approach was for how we would go forward on developing an engagement model with Te Arawa. I want to thank all of those members who are here today who have never openly identified themselves but have carried through the process as assuming the working party for the development of the Te Arawa proposal. And I want to thank you for the work that you did and undertook to take this to the hui iwi which happened and to bring back to us the proposal that we considered and then in December voted to go out to the wider public. So I wanted to speak to that, to say my genuine thanks, our council's thanks, for understanding that your work as committee members was suspended. It put the members in a peculiar space of feeling that they were definitely sitting in another room with the door shut. But they carried out their work with respect and diligence and brought a model back to us, which was our request from council. I wanted to make that publicly known today, and thank you for that work. Councillor Sturt, you indicated that you wished to speak.
Early on that I intend to move recommendation 3 with a modification, and I'll put that at the appropriate time, if I may signal that to you.
So when we get to item 3, you will be then putting your resolution. Thank you, Councillor Sturt. Councillor Whipper.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wondered if I could use this opportunity on point 2 to myself, add acknowledge Te Arawa, the group that put the proposal together, and also to thank all the people of Rotorua for their passionate engagement in this submission process. We've heard a large number of written and verbal submissions, and I have enjoyed listening to all of them, and there's been fantastic, eloquent speakers, well-prepared information, and I've learnt a lot that I didn't know before. So I just want to thank everyone for that, and for the respectful way that they've conducted themselves in these proceedings. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also want to comment on the acknowledgement of the process. It's been a longer process than normal, so the consultation period was for, I believe, 7 weeks instead of the normal 1 month that would have been the norm. And I think you remarked, Your Worship, that it was a great discussion for this community to have. Not a particularly comfortable discussion for the community to have, but a great discussion for the community to have. And unfortunately, the discussion goes on, and we keep getting emails as councillors since the hearings have received, and some of them have been quite upsetting. I have long associations with people who are members of the Pro-Democracy Society, who've made great contributions to events I've been associated with, people who have mentored me when I stood for council. And I just have to comment that despite their attitudes towards this proposal and the threats that we've received that we'll suffer oblivion at the ballot box at the next election, I have to put all those comments aside and stick to the addressing of the issue. But when I see a media release come out this weekend talking about a new elite of Te Arawa, I find that really offensive. I ask myself, is there an old elite out there somewhere who are worried by what is being proposed in this process? And that's a rhetorical question. People can answer that for themselves. But I don't believe anyone has anything to fear from what is proposed if it goes through. So it has been a maturing of our community to have this discussion, and I thank everyone on both sides of the discussion for the contribution they've made. They will continue, for the most part, to have my respect into the future.
Councillor Donaldson, Councillor Hunt, and then Councillor Gould.
Thank you. I too want to thank everyone in our community. I've heard a wide variety of views expressed, and many of them have been extremely eloquent. I think for me the highlight was the depth of knowledge and wisdom that came through in this process, and the history. That for me is something that I treasure, and I feel really privileged to have been in a community with that background and the willingness of people to come forward and share that history. So I look forward to the rest of this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm pleased I'm part of the council which on the 18th of December approved for this report to go out to full consultation by all the community. What staggered me was that we got been reported in the press 1,899 submissions, plus we've got a huge number of people who signed 4 other petitions. It's just staggering that so much of the community have taken so much of an interest in this proposal. Whether they're for or against, it doesn't matter. They've put their heart into some of these reports and wrote what they felt, and I'd like to applaud that, Madam Chair.
Councillor Gould, Councillor Rotorua.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship. First of all, I do want to also second your comments about the Working Party and in putting the proposal to us. The proposal is future-focused. It is not looking back into the past, it is actually future-focused. And I suspect that is what has caused some consternation within the community. People often look for self-interest, for what they fear they're going to lose more than what they're going to gain. And the proposal that's come before us and that we will vote on today is definitely future focused. The proposal took over a year to develop and has had wide consultation. Many comments have come from the community. Some have been informed, many have been uninformed. So I look forward to today's discussion, but I particularly want to thank the Te Arawa working group that put the proposal that has shaken the community and has allowed some maturity in our community. Thank you.
Councillor Sturt and then Councillor Maxwell.
Yes, Madam Chair, I also want to place on record my thanks in particular to yourself for the way in which you've, whilst everyone hasn't agreed, and certainly I've disagreed with parts of it, and that will come out shortly, I just want to place on record to admire you in terms of your leadership and trying to build a better relationship with Te Arawa, because the way of doing business that we have been doing over the last 5 or 6 years has cost these ratepayers millions of dollars because we haven't got it right. And after we all got elected in October 2013, we had a councillor-only meeting up at Skyline Skyrides where we pointed out that we wanted to create a better working relationship with Te Arawa on a more sound footing, and it was taken from that. Te Arawa then agreed that the Te Arawa Standing Committee as it exists wasn't working or functioning appropriately. So the challenge was for Te Arawa to come forward with some proposals or some options that actually will make a difference and make the relationship between this council workable and enduring. And I have to support Councillor Rotorua Tate in that it's about the future, not what's gone in the past. And whilst some people have hung their hat on that this is an undemocratic situation, well, certainly the phone calls I've had and some of the emails I've had, they would far rather see Te Arawa inside the tent than outside the tent looking in. And I hope that my colleagues around the table will acknowledge that. Can I also, Madam Chair, pass on my thanks and have it recorded to our Chief Executive Officer, Jeff Williams, who had to front the public information sessions. He ran the gauntlet at times, but also to you, John Paul, in terms of trying to give a balanced view in reply to some of the letters to the editor. I thank you for that. And to the idiot who put the powder in the envelope, let me tell you that that action has cost you and us as ratepayers $40,000, and the anguish that it's caused to our staff is unbelievable. I think that's cowardly, but I want to come back to the positive, Madam Chair. I just want to thank all those who've been involved in this process, including the pro-democracy people, because it wouldn't have been easy sitting in front of us and advocating what they've advocated. To those who have emailed me and threatened me, again, like Councillor Donaldson said, with a political oblivion next October, bring it on.
Thank you, Councillor Sturt. Are there any other councillors that wish to contribute? Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, I want to thank you for the leadership and the strength that you have shown in leading our council through this very sensitive issue we've had to deal with. I also want to thank the staff who've had to put up with quite a lot. And also, I think the media have been very fair. Not easy, but fair. To our respected elders who've had to go through this, the kaumatu and the koeke, the elders have shown a lot of dignity in the respect that they've shown. I take my hat off to them, the leadership of Sir Toby and the young leadership of Arapeta. The Te Arawa Standing Committee, I was on there for 20 years from the beginning, since its inception. And we led the country many years ago, but we don't now. But to the committee members who've been there over the period of time, I thank them. I really do. They've been tremendous. And what you've put up now, well, we'll see in the next recommendation. But I do want to thank them, and I think they've shown to our community that we are tātou tātou. Kia ora.
No further speakers on this section. I'm going to put the vote. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Thank you. I now call for a mover and a seconder. Oh, yes, before. He's sitting there waiting. Yeah. Yeah. We'll ask, before I call for a mover and a seconder, I ask JP if you will speak to the Te Arawa Partnership model decision making, and then I'll indicate that there will be, I'm sure, some points of clarification and questions, and we will have that round as required from councillors. Thank you, John Paul.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your Worship, I've got a brief presentation here, and councillors, ignoring the number of bullet points there, it is reasonably brief. It's probably about a slide per topic there, but I thought it was quite important to take you through the report and the key sections of the report. So initially I'll start off with just an overview of what we received back as far as public input into the submission process, restating the Council's objectives. So these were identified in the Statement of Proposal, and I've also, and you've seen it in the report, sort of shown pictorially an engagement continuum where we've just looked at the different options that were available. And just for those who might struggle with the acronyms I've put on the screen there, that was the 4 Statement of Proposal options. So that was what went out in the discussion document, and also the additional option that we received back from the PDS, which is the Pro-Democracy Society. So we've also evaluated that option in light of those submissions, and I've also included within the report, and it's referenced in a number of places, the 5 other council examples that have been identified. Councillors, you remember on the public information sessions we made available in the packs of information there, examples of what a number of other councils were doing. So at this point, and as we've started to refine through the submission points, we've pulled out 5 examples just to give you a feel for what else is happening around the country. I've made a slide there and some comments around the legality of the different options. And then really the key focus of this report has been around what were the key themes that came out of submissions, and also we've also tried to show how the submissions relate to the different elements involved in the Te Arawa proposal model, and what areas of concern existed for the community around different aspects of those. I've then gone on to do an evaluation of the 4 Statement of Proposal options, as well as the Pro-Democracy Society option, against those key submission themes, and that's included within the report. I've also got a slide included in this presentation, and just to close off some of the discussions, or to highlight some of the issues around the Māori ward discussions and questions that have been raised, and then finishing the presentation just by looking at the recommended modified model for your consideration today. So a number of councillors have already made reference to some of these points, but the Statement of Proposal that went out for public consultation went out for approximately 7 weeks. It was just under 7 weeks, and using the special consultative procedure or process, with that Statement of Proposal, we're legally required to go out for a 4-week period or a month. So we extended that period to ensure we got back as many submissions as possible. In addition, a number of officers fronted 10 public information sessions, which involved probably upwards of 200 people attending in a wide range of venues, some of the ones we haven't used before, and so they were very positive meetings and good opportunities to talk with the community about the Statement of Proposal. In addition to the submissions, we received 4 separate petitions with a total of 2,060 signatures. We've just taken those petitions. We haven't attempted in any way to verify whether the people's names are accurate or the addresses are accurate, or whether people signed multiple petitions. We've just taken them as we received them. And as a number of councillors have indicated, close to 1,900 submissions received. Included within the report, and it's detailed at the back, is a broad analysis of a number of letters to the editor in the Rotorua Review and also the Daily Post. So 210 recorded letters within that process, and obviously also the 5 days of hearings when councillors heard more than 200 speakers as well. So a huge volume of information which has all been circulated to councillors. Those that weren't able to attend some of the hearing periods or some of the hearing days have received audio too, so they were able to catch up on what was said during the hearing process. So Council, I thought it was very important for us to just re-look at the Council objectives. So these were stated in the statement of proposal that went out for public consultation, and really that box at the bottom is the key point, in that this report has continued to focus on, okay, so we've received those submissions, what do we do with those submissions, and how do they reconcile against the objectives that were initially stated by Council. So you can see there the model was developed by Te Arawa at Council's request as a means to help Council meet its 2030 vision commitment to effectively partner with Te Arawa. Councillor Sturt has noted that from the workshops that councillors undertook very early in the triennium at Skyline, and that really formed that Rotorua 2030 vision document. Obviously, to improve the delivery of Council's legal and statutory obligations to Māori, we've had a lot of discussions and a number of legal opinions citing the different sections of the Local Government Act that covers, and again I've made references to that within this report. And obviously to strengthen Te Arawa's participation in council decision making. So a number of issues were raised about the effectiveness of the Te Arawa Standing Committee and the ability for Te Arawa to provide their perspective into council decision making. So that was again one of those key objectives of council. The positive aspect of looking at the strategic opportunities for the betterment of the district and partnership, and also to build iwi capacity and capability to partner with local government. Again, that is a statutory element of Section 81 within the Local Government Act, so another focus for this council within its objectives. So Council, I've included within this report just a very simple framework or continuum just to try and show what legislation and what approach we're taking with the different models that have been put forward. So there's been a lot of conversation about a consultation advisory capacity, but also what's been recognised within the Te Arawa proposal, but also within those council objectives is to be more active, particularly in a partnering type approach. And then on the far end of that continuum, and I've put a red line through it, representation. So again, we've crossed out of the Local Government Act at that point and started to talk about Māori wards under the Local Electoral Act. Now I've just made a note there that we've made some decisions already under the Local Electoral Act, which has removed that discussion certainly from 2016, and I'll talk a bit more about that through the presentation as well. So the legal opinions, councillors, you've received again have highlighted the significant discretion that exists for you and how you interpret that Section 81. So even though it's a local authority must, what that must is certainly open to your interpretation and your decisions, so to see what is appropriate for each local council. So again, Section A there talks about that involvement in decision-making processes of the local authority, and Part B was that reference I made to in the earlier slide about capacity and the ability to develop capacity for iwi to contribute to those processes. So councillors, I've plotted the four options that were included within the statement of proposal, as well as the pro-democracy option on that continuum, just to give you a feel for where I think the intent of those different options lies. So you can see again of starting on the right hand side, I put a line through the representation option there and just made a note at the bottom right hand corner with a green box saying that the statutory timeframes have been missed for inclusion of Māori seats discussion for 2016 and 2019. So the terms of reference have been set for the representation review. So again, I'll come back to that later on. Councillors, I've also shown there option 2, and I've put option 2, which was the Te Arawa proposal, which was supported in principle as part of the statement of proposal, at the upper end of that partnering active involvement continuum. And there's a number of reasons why I placed it at that top end. And obviously it was talking about Te Arawa nominees being appointed on by council to the 2 main decision-making committees of council. And I've shown it at that high end because Rotorua Lakes Council has committees of the whole, so they are significant committees for council, and all available powers other than those that are excluded from delegation are delegated to those 2 committees. So they are very powerful committees within the Rotorua Lakes Council. And a number of submitters have made that point with council in their submissions. I've also put probably those who are questioning why I've got a little question mark next to it. And one of the issues that we've seen during some due diligence through this process, and it's identified within the report, is the question about whether our current call-in ability that exists under standing orders, so the notice of motion, is a valid, legal and risk-free tool to overturn a decision of a committee. So what we're saying then is that, that with the full powers pretty much delegated to council committees, they are very significant and powerful committees with significant powers to undertake and make decisions. And so that call-in ability is really at question within that. So hence my question mark at that point. So it really does put it at the very top end of that. You can see there option 3, which was the Te Arawa proposal without the voting. I've generally placed that mid-range within that active involvement. Again, the key elements of that was to have iwi perspective at the decision-making table. And again, it's focusing on those 2 key committees. Option 1, which was reverting to the Te Arawa Standing Committee, you can see there I've put it at the lower end of that partnering and active involvement around committees. And the reason why I've done that is though the membership of those committees was included, I think it was 6 Te Arawa representatives, which were voted for by Te Arawa. They had voting on that committee, but they're very much a separate committee of council, so they weren't involved in the active decision making involved in the other 2 committees, so they're off to the side. So therefore they were making recommendations to council on a far more limited scope of delegations than the 2 main committees. So that's why I've placed that one at the lower end. One of the other options we included within the statement of proposal, councillors, was just to continue to deal with consultation on an ad hoc basis. And we used the examples of the MOUs and the protocols, but also around specific projects such as the Rotorua sewage scheme. So particular purpose or particular project. So very much in that consultation advisory space. So not formal committees. So that's why that was in that different space. I've also placed the pro-democracy option at the lower end of that range as well. And the main reasons for that is, if you remember the submissions we received from pro-democracy, their submission or their proposal showed a advisory committee of iwi representatives that would be unpaid, but elected, and that would be balanced with another community advisory group. So I very much put that in the consultation advisory phase because of the unpaid nature of it, or voluntary nature of it. I put it at the lower end of that continuum as well. So that's sort of how I assessed, or at least placed on that continuum, the different options identified in the statement of proposal, as well as the alternative option put forward by the Pro-Democracy Society. So councillors, again, I made reference to another of other examples from other councils, and what I've identified there across the 2 main parts of that continuum we're talking about, that partnering active involvement on committees, Waipa, Marlborough, Kapiti, Matamata, Piako and obviously Hamilton City at the lower end of that continuum. Now, councillors, I've included within the appendices of the report that you have details of their terms of reference, and just highlighting there in very similar names: Strategic Planning and Policy Committee for Waipa, one iwi representative with voting rights, and they have a number of other relationships there. I also picked up from discussions with one of their staff members at Waipa District. They have a population of 13% Māori within the district. I was also advised by that council that they've had this arrangement in place since 1993. So at the same time that the Te Arawa Standing Committee was set in place, they've had this arrangement in place. So well over 20 years, and it's obviously served them well. Council, I just pulled out this, and it's quoted on page 180 of the agenda, which is just about the terms of reference for the Waipa committees. The full council's role is to carry out the responsibilities required under the Local Government Act 2002. It is the final decision-making authority and generally approves or adopts recommendations made by committees. So I've really highlighted that because really that's obviously where the modified model is moving. And again, when you see some of the submission themes, you understand why I'm sort of making reference to that point at this time. So, councillors, there's been a lot of discussion about legality, and so I've just taken this as an extract directly out of my report. So the 4 SOP, Statement of Proposal options, and an alternative model of engagement identified by the Pro-Democracy Society are lawful, and the key element here is to varying degrees meets the council's obligations in regard to Māori involvement in the decision-making processes of council. So that was really just that test of where we currently stand with both what was in the Statement of Proposal and also the alternative model. And as I said earlier, under Section 81, Council does have significant discretion to determine how it wishes to meet those obligations. Now, the next point I've made there, and it refers to Council's traditional use of the notice of motion provisions in standing orders. So this is very much our current arrangements. Council will be aware we used to have a modification to our standing orders, which was the 3-day rule, which we removed at the beginning of this triennium. So during our sort of due diligence around what do we need to look at within our committee structures, it was highlighted to us that there is actually some case law where it has been challenged, the ability for a council to overturn a decision where it's been given under delegation to a committee. So that is important for us just to highlight that risk, because it's certainly been an understanding around this table and certainly within the governance of this organisation that standing orders provides that safety mechanism through a notice of motion to overturn a decision. So that's another reason why we've had to very much look at our current delegations, and as really one of the driving reasons for why you've seen the change from full delegations to recommendatory delegations to the 2 key committees of council. So that's an important point around how this council operates independently of what's been discussed here today around a Te Arawa proposal. So that's an important point. So councillors, I'll just move on to how we've tried to summarise what has been a huge volume of submissions, both written and verbal. So council, we've tended to break this into 3 key areas, and you'll see I come back to these later on. So some of the key messages from submissions which were against the Te Arawa proposal have very much focused on the need to protect the ultimate decision-making power of council. And again, that was another reason why I referenced what Waipa had done around their recommendatory roles. The need to really identify or provide the distinction or to ensure that there's no threat of the distinction between council and its committees. Certainly a lot of the feedback we received, councillors, and you would have all heard this, was around well, all members of council sit on the committees, everything's delegated to the committees, they are council. So that was a very strong message we received during the submission process. The ability or concerns about the accountability to electors of the people they elected to be councillors. So that was another very strong message. And the overall responsibility of councillors, council to the community and voters. So very similar point there. The issue about the ability to review and address committee decisions, as I've touched on, and also the other recurring theme, which was no special rights to any sector of society. So that was another recurring message. So again, we've tried to see those as encapsulating a lot of the messages that came through around concerns around democracy, but really honing in on those to say, well, what does that mean to council and to the statement of proposal, which was about council and its committee structure. On the other side of the slide there, the other key messages for council was in support of the proposal, and just to paraphrase there, the importance to have a seat at the table as opposed to being in the next room. And that was a statement about the effectiveness of the Te Arawa Standing Committee, where they were away from the table and away from those key committees where the important decisions were being discussed and made. So also the ability to provide an effective Māori perspective and input to decision making, the need to deliver more than what had been previously delivered through the Te Arawa Standing Committee in advisory function only. It did take recommendations, but they were separate from those decision making processes. The need to follow through with the partnership with Te Arawa, and the acknowledgement that it was Te Arawa who helped develop this proposal. So those were some of the key messages on that side. I've also highlighted there the underpinning issues for council, and again it's referenced back to those council objectives I talked about earlier, but also the need to meet those statutory obligations, obviously the legality of any arrangements, and finally I've just talked about there or highlighted the clarity in functions and roles between the committees and council. So that was just another driver or theme that seemed to come through. So councillors, apologies for this, and I'll just try and talk briefly to a few key points in this. And what we wanted to do at this process, apart from those key themes, was just to break down the different elements of the proposal and see if we could identify whether there was any particular themes or issues that are identified in particular areas. Now, I'll just use the pointer a bit at this point, councillors. The first part there, the first question, and apologies for the size of this, relates to that first question as it appears on the submission form. Now, a lot of people were concerned that that question was leading, and so that in effect affected the way people answered, but I think there was a lot of people who said, yes, I think there needs to be a relationship with Te Arawa, but I do not agree with what's being proposed. Now, councillors, if you look at the numbers in the next two questions, you might receive a false impression that it was overwhelming support for the Te Arawa proposal. That certainly wasn't the case. Submissions tended to be at two ends of the spectrum, those entirely for and those entirely against. What's probably masked by those two bullet points is that for many of those opposed to the Te Arawa option, they provided a significant number of reasons. Now, and some of them's repeated the same reasons. So clearly here you can start seeing, even though it says 760 in support, those against is not 97. It includes those who said, no, don't like the proposal because it wasn't democratic. It gives a minority special rights and disproportionate power, 216. So again, the costs are too high, costs are not clear, so that was another reason cited as being opposed to the proposal, 127. 17 about what about other groups. Māori wards are a valid option that should be considered instead of the Te Arawa proposal, so that comes strongly through, 347 who submitted on that. This should be an issue taken to referendum. The consultation process is not adequate or biased. and those didn't support for those reasons, or the need to support another advisory group. So as you can see there, it's quite a different picture when you start looking at those against and those against for a range of reasons. Now I'd also come down and highlight here, this is the questions around the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee and O&M Committee. So a lot of the focus here has been disagree with voting rights and non-elected members on committees, 336. So again, councillors, that's why you just need to be careful about reading this to see that a lot of those who opposed to the Te Arawa proposal cited a range of different reasons coming through here. I'll just come across to this side. Even on this side, the view that council needed to consider re-establishing the Te Arawa Standing Committee as it previously was, and addressing some of the reasons why it failed. So again, a number of submitters citing the lack of clarity as to why the Te Arawa Standing Committee had failed, and a belief that it should be corrected. Now, councillor, I'll then just come across to this side, and again, obviously the Pro-Democracy Society put forward their model and promoted it during the consultation phase. So 204 submissions cited support for the pro-democracy option, but obviously during the submission process it attracted 293 people who did not support it as an option. So again, councillors, this was just an attempt to try and hone in on where the key issues were and what people saw. So very much on that general perspective, and very much reflected in the previous slide I showed you around themes. The actual mechanics of the model attracted very few comments through the process. So council, you'll see from my report that the evaluation of the four statements of four options included in the statement of proposal, as well as the pro-democracy option. The report concludes that the four options identified and the alternative option, each in their own way, do not fully address those key issues and themes that I identified on the previous slide or raised during the submission process. And I've made the comment previously that submissions on the statement of proposal were very polarised at the two ends of that engagement continuum. Those feeling that this was an important step to see Te Arawa at the table and involved in decision making, and those who thought that was undemocratic and wrong. So councillors, I won't spend too much time on this, but this is an attempt I made to come to that evaluation. You can see here down the left-hand side, I picked up those key themes that had been identified from those for and those against the proposal, and also those sort of underpinning objectives for council at the bottom, and just put the four options that were included within the statement of proposal, and also the pro-democracy alternative model through that framework. And as you can see there, I've highlighted in the sort of the grey boxes where the different models tended to fail against the different submission points or themes raised in the submission process. So that's really been one of the reasons why we've looked at a modified option, as well as obviously the legal view around the effectiveness of council's call-in provisions under standing orders. So councillors, I'll also just quickly take you through this. This is a flow chart which sets out the processes that we need to follow as part of the representation review. So on the right hand side there, councillors, you can see that by the 23rd of November 2014, council resolves to not introduce Māori representation for 2016 elections, and to hold a referendum alongside the 2016 elections. So I believe council took its decision in that space on about the 30th of October. So that in a way locks council. So we've taken that decision already. Now that decision was notified, and we also notified the community that through a petition of about 5% of electors, they can demand council goes to a poll. So we had until the 28th of February for citizens to demand a poll. So we did not receive a citizen-led demand for a poll, and therefore we're through now to the set decision-making processes around the representation review. So on that basis, the representation review that's about to kick off in the next week or so cannot consider the issue of Māori wards. Now, just as a sideline, I don't know what the decision-making process was, but across in New Plymouth, they have just completed a poll, and obviously I think that poll was in before the 21st of May, so that was their opportunity. So councillors, at this stage, because of that decision made in late October, and because we received no elector petition to drive us to a poll, the terms of reference for the representation review have been restricted, and Māori wards is not an option, nor can we place a referendum question at the 2016 local body elections. So at this stage, if council was to decide they wanted to consider Māori wards, the earliest that could be considered was for the 2019 elections. And what that would result in is another representation review somewhere between sort of late 2017 and 2018. So again, there is the risk at that point of also having a referendum-driven type response based on a petition. So at this stage, there's no opportunity for us to talk about Māori wards within the 2016 election process. So councillors, the new options or the modified options that are before you, you can see in the recommendation 3, we've looked at Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee and the Operations and Monitoring Committee. So what's being proposed in the appendix is a change in the power of those committees. So rather than receiving all the delegations as is the current environment, they have been removed to recommendatory only. And again, that allows us to address the risks associated with not having the provisions around the standing orders or notice of motion. So what is proposed is to include up to 2 iwi representatives who would be nominated by a Te Arawa board and appointed by council. The mechanics of this would mean that council would receive its recommendations at council meetings. So where you currently receive minutes, you would have a situation where agendas for council would say the council receive the minutes and recommendations 1 to X that have come from those different committees, so that they could be passed in their entirety, or council could choose to redebate those at council meetings. But ultimate decision making is then restricted to council at council meetings. We've also included, as per the proposal, amendments to the delegations of the Chief Executive's Performance Committee, with up to 1 non-voting iwi representative included. Now, you'll also note what wasn't discussed within the Te Arawa proposal is the Audit and Risk Committee. So with the changes proposed to both the Operations and Monitoring Committee and the SPNF Committee, moving them to recommendatory, we can't really have an Audit and Risk Subcommittee which recommends to a recommending committee, so that now has been moved to reporting to council. The other issue that's included, and we've crossed into the different legislation and a number of other issues, was around involvement by Te Arawa in RMA hearings, and what we're proposing in this report is to treat that as a separate piece of work and bring a report back to you in the next couple of months. So council, and just concluding, that's a diagram of the proposed structure as it's included within this report. So the grey boxes highlight those committees where we have put forward recommendations in this report to change their delegations and membership and powers. So that's the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee, Operations and Monitoring, CE Performance Committee, and now the Audit and Risk Committee, previously having reported to R&M, now reporting to Council. Statutory Hearings Committee would be discussed as part of the RMA report that would come at a later time. So happy to answer off any questions, Your Worship.
Right, we'll open now for questions and clarifications, but no statements at this stage or debate. Councillor Gould.
Chair, clarification on the Strategy, Policy, Finance Committee and on the Operations Monitoring Committee with 2 Te Arawa representatives, do they have voting rights?
Your Worship, it's up to 2 members. So again, there may be a question of appropriateness, and it's important that Council has discretion as to who they appoint. So it's up to 2 iwi representatives, and yes, it would be voting rights as proposed.
Councillor Rotorua.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. JP, it's around the Section 81. How big is that risk? You've talked about the alternative model, and we've had the opportunity in the past to look at decisions. That's the 3-day rule. So, and you've determined now that it's a risk, or likely, or could be a risk. And I want to know, how big is that risk? Since I've been on council, we've only, I think, done that twice. So I just want to know, is that a risk, or is that just convenient?
Council, it remains a risk, because we had always been under the understanding that council had the power within its delegation, within standing orders, through a notice of motion to overturn a committee decision. Now, we're probably in a fairly friendly environment in saying that our committees are actually comprised of all councillors. So it's probably quite low risk, but I think it's important that we set out to you the fact that there has been this misconception that is a safe or a risk-free mechanism, when actually it has been tested in the courts, and there is that question about the ability for a council to overturn a decision where delegated to a committee. So that's been tested in court now, so there is a risk there, and it's certainly a perception in this council that standing orders was it, and that's all we needed. So it is important that we set that out and really highlight the fact that that's probably why we've sort of said in the issue around dealing with it as a current issue, regardless of the Te Arawa proposal, we would be suggesting to council that you consider looking at the terms of reference of both of those key committees and changing them to recommendatory.
So you've got Mick Vicker there, Councillor Sereng. We might just swap them over. Councillor Sereng and then Councillor Sturt.
A matter of clarification, that means then that any recommendation that comes to full council is open for full debate again.
Clarify that for Councillor
Which
Sereng.
means it takes away, if I may say so, the very smooth operation that we've had for years, whereas Councillor Rakawa Tate said in this term of council we've only had 2 occasions where we've actually redebated and changed the verdict. So anything can be redebated, regardless of whether, and particularly if a councillor hasn't been at the committee meeting, then it can all be regurgitated again, so to speak.
Councillor, can you clarify that, John Paul?
Councillor, I suppose that the key element there is, yes, that's correct, but the question I would pose back is, if we put in front of council the view that these are the minutes to be received and recommendation 1 to X that's come through from the committee, if council has participated in that debate and had voted in, so at that point you'd need a mover and a seconder, and if someone chose to say, well, actually I don't want to take recommendation 1, for example, and we wanted to redebate it, you would have to have the majority ready to choose to redebate it. The other point I would make too is, again, committees are where council does its discussions, and its decision making is really driven out of what happens at those committees. You know, obviously you're bound far more tightly under standing orders at council meetings, so I would have suggested that if the majority, when it came to council as a recommendation, wanted to overturn the recommendation that had come from the committee, it would send it back to the committee, because that's the forum where you have the flexibility to appropriately discuss it. So procedurally, I would have thought we're probably talking minimal chances of the majority choosing to redebate at council. So very much like the notice of motion, but obviously you do need to have a majority to move into that discussion.
Councillor Stewart.
Two questions. Firstly, JP, in your experience in looking at the models for the Waipa District Council and the Marlborough District Council, which could be hardly be labelled liberal communities, how effective have the voting rights that their subcommittees have got or allocated to iwi, how effective have they been in the smooth running of the council? And the second question is, with the right of the subcommittees to only make recommendations to full council, the option of sending it back, as you just said, is a distinct possibility, but at the moment that is, under the current standing orders, that is not. So it's a safety mechanism. For example, if 5 of us are away from one particular committee, the committee makes a recommendation. The safety valve is that there may be 3 that weren't present at the meeting who've got an opposing view to what the committee had recommended. They will have the opportunity to either send it back to the committee for redebate or to debate it at full council. It won't block or hold up the processes at council.
There's a couple of questions in there, Councillor Stewart. Probably the first one is the feedback we received from Waipa was that it has not affected decision making of that council significantly. They didn't cite any numbers of where decisions had been overturned. The discussion I held with staff there was about the quality of discussions and the value created by that iwi perspective into those committees and into the debate and discussions in those committees. The second point you made, which was about if a decision is overturned, and you cite an example of where 3 might have been away and they therefore choose to overturn it at council, that's probably also reflective of the approach taken by councillors currently to use a notice of motion. So it's the same safety mechanism discussion. It's just by changing that to a recommendatory, you have created, I suppose, a positive relationship between council and committees, where council positively confirms the recommendations that are coming forward, as opposed to having to watch for the 1% safety valve mechanism to overturn it and send it back. So it's very different. It comes down to the decision making that you're undertaking. So again, I would suggest that if this change was made, you'd probably see a similar number of recommendations rejected as you've currently seen under the notice of motion procedures, because again, it still requires a majority.
Just a supplementary question, Madam Chair. Just want to go back to the Waipa, because I'm going to vote shortly, the Waipa and the Marlborough District Councils, which have got examples of iwi interaction at the committee level. Has that created a better understanding and a better trust between those 2 councils and iwi?
I'm going to actually rule that out. I don't think a council officer can talk about trust relationship. It's a perception, really. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have 2 question areas. The first one concerns what is being promoted currently as being a change in the delegations. And we're being told, and I read in the paper, that we've actually moved forward into an amended model, and the paper was the first time I'd heard of it. And I'm picking up here a copy of Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee delegations dated the 20th of May 2015. And this is the current Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee delegations. And it states very loudly and clearly on this and every other copy of every delegation I have received for every committee meeting, the purpose of the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee is to develop all strategic policy and planning frameworks for approval by council. This committee has never had delegated authority to make any decisions other than for approval by council. So what's changed?
Would you like to clarify that as the recommendatory rather as opposed to the resolution?
Your Worship, that I don't have a copy of the current delegations in front of me. I only have the copy of the recommended delegations in front of you. What those included were recommendations that related to those powers that council cannot delegate. So the ability for council to receive submissions, to develop and recommend to council around the long-term plan. So there is a mix of those where it is already recommendatory and to council, in council being able to discharge those delegations it cannot delegate. So this is around the long-term plan, purchasing of land, establishing bylaws. There's a number of those elements which can't be delegated. So the SPNF committee will go through the procedures and the process for those and recommend to council and support. But there's also the ability for the SPNF committee to approve other policies and other strategy documents, and also to receive budgets. So that is in the current delegation. So there is a mix of delegated powers and recommendatory powers that already exist within SPNF. What's proposed is to move completely to recommendatory.
Question?
Thank you. My second question relates to the statistics that have been presented to councillors. And I would like to ask why this council has not gone, as suggested by even our friend Keith Garrett, to a separate person to actually analyse the figures so that we can actually all have confidence in what is being put to us. As you well know, this councillor does not accept numbers just put in front of him without questioning them. And so, in fact, I have actually sat there and I have analysed every single one of these submissions. And I see, for example, the inference that 56% are in favour of the proposal in what is presented by council. And my analysis actually says that if you do a proper analysis, you will find out that the number of submissions actually indicated in favour of the preferred option is 929, which is only 49.57%. Because included in...
Point of order, Madam Chair. We were asked to just ask questions.
I am asking for
Thank you.
clarification as to why these figures do not agree.
I will make a ruling here that you're calling into account staff's credibility. And staff are objective and take no line. Your analysis may differ from staff. At the end of the day, we are deciding about a process going forward, but I cannot accept a criticism of staff and their objectivity. It is improper.
Even if they're wrong?
Not going to debate. We're not debating together here. I will not accept that criticism that staff have lacked objectivity.
Then, no doubt, Your Worship, you will not accept me tabling my analysis for councillors to be properly informed as to the content of these documents.
Councillor Kent, this is a question session, question and clarification.
My question was, why are the figures different? Widely different. It's not just 3%.
We don't need to answer that. Councillors had no role at all in the interpretation. You've taken on a political role. That is one undertaken by objective staff. I rule that out of order.
Excuse me, point of order, Madam Chair. I am an elected official who has been asked to make a judgment based on these submissions. I am making a judgment on those submissions.
I'll ask the Chief Executive to clarify.
Through you, Your Worship. So staff have actually undertaken the analysis of this work and provided their recommendations to you for your consideration. They have also, as you have in front of you, provided details of all of the submissions, and you have also sat in on all of the submissions at the same time. So you have got both the staff analysis, plus you've actually got the raw information provided to you for your assessment. Whether you consider the staff view or recommendations made to you as not what you see, that is actually your role. So if you do not agree with the recommendations nor the assessment provided, you're at liberty to actually disagree with that. That's why you were provided with the raw material. So you are able to put your view. This is a question time, though, for the staff recommendations.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Weber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. JP, I just wondered, did you, when you were looking at other models, was anyone on the CE Performance Review Committee?
I don't believe so. So, Your Worship, I focused mainly on the core committees of council. I think I included, I don't know if I managed to include the examples around CE performance committees, but I don't recall representatives being on a CE performance committee.
Are there any further questions or points of clarification? Councillor Serang.
One more point of clarification. Remind me, JP, are all councillors on the Performance Review Committee?
Your Worship, I think that's included in the back of the document, so I don't believe there are. So if you turn to 167.
The answer is they are.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Councillor McVicker.
Bishop, can I point out on page 167, it states quite clearly that this involvement is significant even without voting rights, as membership of the Chief Executive Performance Committee does not include all elected members. I was going to ask that same point of clarification.
Your Worship, that appears it's an error that's crept in, because if you look at the delegations at the back, that's the correct one. Yeah, that is wrong.
Yeah. Thank you. Any further points of clarification? Or now return to Councillor Sturt, who foreshadowed a new motion. Councillor Sturt.
If I could just clarify my position, I have a modification because I would like to see a modification that under section B3 the reference to the Chief Executive's Performance Committee is removed, because the reason why, and I'll move that way, I'll give that indication, because in my view this is solely the right of the elected representatives. We're elected, and that's the only person that we elect, that we appoint. He's the only person that we can hold account or set performance targets for, and I believe in employment situation it's best practice that that be removed, because I think that would actually put the iwi person in a situation that probably they shouldn't be involved in under law, and we haven't had that checked, I know, but I just think it would be a really uncomfortable situation for the iwi representative.
So you are moving in that direction. Councillor Weber is seconding. I'll put that motion. No. Councillors to speak to that before we put that to the vote. Councillor Serang, are you clear on what Councillor Sturt?
Yes, I am, thank you. But I'd like to speak to it, thank you. Thank you. And I'd just seek some clarification, possibly actually from the CEO, Madam Chair. That does not preclude our Chief Executive from indicating that he would like to have a view from somebody on his performance. Am I correct on that, Jeff?
Correct.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak to this? Councillor Weber?
Yeah, I'd just like the opportunity, thank you, Madam Chair. I just really don't believe that there is the need to have someone on this from from iwi, because as Councillor Sturt has said, I'm just probably reinforcing, and certainly I haven't colluded or anything like that. I came to this independently, but I really think that our CEO is the only one we employ. We are all elected, and I think that it's just a step too far, in my opinion, at this point, and I don't really believe that it would add a great deal of value. So for now, I would like to remove that part. Thank you.
Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a point of clarification. All that we're doing is just taking out the Chief Executive Performance Committee. Is that correct? We're still debating the other issues after the vote of this is taken.
We're not actually. Would you like to clarify that?
So councillors, as I read recommendation 3 as moved by Councillor Sturt, effectively what is being recommended there is actually the full model with the Chief Executive's Performance Committee option taken away. So what you are voting on is involvement in the Strategy Policy Finance Committee, the Operations and Monitoring Committee, the terms of membership and so on of the delegations for those committees, and at the same time the model in terms of the Te Arawa board as actually was recommended.
Donaldson.
So just clarification, Your Worship, now is the time to debate that entire motion, is that correct?
Yes.
I didn't realise that.
Yeah. That's what we had to make quite clear, so that's right.
I'm
we
happy
now
with my motion.
right.
I just wanted to say, Your Worship, I did misunderstand that this was our opportunity to speak to the whole
Me
motion.
too.
So if you wouldn't mind, could I have an opportunity to do that at some point?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, because I was only speaking to that. I'm happy to second it as it is.
Yes.
But I just want to be able to speak to the whole thing.
As mover of the motion, it would go back to
Yep.
Councillor Sturt, the other councillors to speak, and then Councillor Sturt has the final wrap.
Councillors are entitled to speak. You were the mover of the motion, Councillor Sturt, that now adapts the motion as represented on the screen. Does anybody else wish to debate this motion 3? You can speak to that, Councillor Sturt.
While others are collecting their thoughts. Madam Chair, we're at the crux of the matter in terms of iwi representation on 2 subcommittees, and certainly in answer to my questions earlier that JP and my involvement on the local DHB, which has been in place for 8 years, where iwi representatives have been on all subcommittees, not only the Rotorua, the Lakes DHB, but the Waikato DHB, where they have had iwi representatives from specific iwi, i.e. on the Lakes DHB we've got Te Arawa and Tūwharetoa, and they bring to the table the knowledge and the experience and expertise in terms of Māori health. And in each of the iwi areas, they have a Māori health committee that discuss their own issues, similar to the board as being proposed, and bring those issues through to the Lakes DHB. They do not attend the full board meeting. They can make recommendations to the full board, and as Dr. Stuart Edwards said in his submission, there had been no issues of power grabs or rogue decisions in his experience. Madam Chair, I understand I've got 10 minutes, have I? 5 minutes? 5 minutes? Okay. Madam Chair, I think...
5 and then a right of reply.
Oh, jeez. Oh, I knew you'd want that. I knew you'd want that. Madam Chair, I think through this process, the 2 sleeping giants have been awoken. The first giant in sadness is the sadness that a minority doesn't see the need for another minority to have a say in the decision-making processes of this council. As JP has eloquently pointed out, Waipa, Marlborough and other councils have other arrangements where they engage with iwi, pay them a meeting fee and mileage allowance, and they're at the table. The objectors to option 2 are aware, as I am, that the notion of the Māori wards was thrown in at the 11th hour. That's a separate process altogether, and by having the votes on 2 council committees on council may well be seen as undemocratic by some, but I'm elected democratically and charged with making decisions in the best interests of the Rotorua people, as you heard in our prayer, and by supporting option 2 with the amendments as tabled is what I intend to do. I'm meeting my democratic obligations. Our Rotorua form of democracy, as advised by many, has been one of inclusion and been side by side when the chips are down, working together for the common good of all the people of Rotorua. I heard nothing from Te Arawa submitters that gives me cause to fear, alarm, or that their goals and aspirations for them and their families and their iwis are any different from any other group in our community. The second sleeping giant awaken is the Te Arawa people. In a united way, as the standard of submissions that they put forward were first class. And the submissions of people who supported the Te Arawa stance, from Māori and non-Māori, like Luke Martin, like Keith Garrett, like Dr. Stuart Edwards, Mr. Macaulay, and other people who haven't got a race, not coming from a race angle that some of the pro-democracy people believe they have. And those people support us getting around the table. What has saddened me is having to sit here for 5 days and hear words like separatism, racism, apartheid, and labelling a significant part of our community as just another interest group. The latest scenario in Saturday's Daily Post stating civil war will result is a motive claptrap in my view. In my view, those are the views of the past, thankfully as Rotorua New Zealand has moved forward. I heard from supporters of Te Arawa's model nothing but good intent, sound judgment, the best interests of the district, and the request to be consulted on an even playing field. On the contrary, I heard nothing but suspicion, mistrust, promoting one particular interest group, fear, and anti-involvement sentiments. I have to say freedom of speech exists and all those people are entitled to their views. So why are we here today? Why are we all at this point? Well, from my angle, there is a common denominator, which I'll come to shortly. Council went to the Environment Court, as advised again by Ngāti Rangiuehi representative Te Rangi Kahiki Bidwa, to fight iwi for a higher water draw-off from Tanewha Springs. Iwi asked Council and the Chair of Works to listen, and Council ignored iwi's advice to talk. Fight iwi did. And Councillor Maxwell, Councillor Martin and myself were there at the Environment Court supporting iwi as we saw the draw-off to be unsustainable. Then, as we all know from Mr. Miha's submission, in his submission to this process, he told us that this council proposal proposed to dispose of sewage in the Rotomā Roda Ehu area. I was at the meeting at the Rotoruiti Sports Club that night, along with Willie Emery and Mr. Miha, where Mr. Miha told the Chair of Works and the staff to come and talk to us, iwi, before you proceed. Did Council listen? No, they ignored iwi, and Council was admonished in the Environment Court. When Mr. Miha said the Council officers stated they had consulted iwi, iwi said enough is enough. Both actions cost this Council millions, and that's what I want to avoid, and hence why I support option 2 with amendment. Why should we be fighting our own ratepayers in the Environment Court and costing you and I, all of us in this room, millions of dollars? Option 2 will open up the lines of trust, communication with Te Arawa, and a board who will have a distinctive Te Arawa view. And what is there to fear in that? The common denominator I talked about earlier, and the consistency, is the chairman of the pro-democracy group. She was the chairman of the Works Committee that ignored iwi and their requests to reconsider those proposals. Your Worship, I employ my colleagues to take this issue and move forward as a community and support option 2.
Thank you, Councillor Sturt. And no noise from the good area, please. We have another request, and Councillor Sturt, I must apologise. As the mover of the motion, you were allowed 10 minutes, other speakers 5, and right of reply 5. I think you've had enough. Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll also be speaking in support of the motion on the table. When we go to the local body elections, every 3 years, we receive an envelope of voting papers for 3 entities. The Regional Council, which has Māori wards or Māori constituency seats. We receive a set of voting papers for the District Health Board, and we receive the voting papers for Rotorua District Council, Mayor and 12 councillors elected at large. The District Health Board is interesting, and many submitters have drawn our attention to that as a comparator to what's proposed here. So 11 members on that board with full voting rights, but only 7 elected. The other 4, including the chair, are appointed. And for the last 2 terms of the District Health Board, 1 has been appointed from Te Arawa and 1 from Te Wharetua. There has not been any, to my knowledge or to the knowledge of our MPs, any complaint about those unelected appointments to the District Health Board, which covers a population greater than that represented by our 13 elected members and manages a budget of over $300 million per year compared to our something like $117 million. So I wonder why the double standard. One of the submitters is a former district councillor and a former District Health Board member, and when questioned on this point, said that it's because Māori have negative indicators in terms of their health. Well, I'm an East Side Buddy councillor. Just last week I sat in a meeting where the Ngāpuna community raised 3 pages of negative impacts on that community caused by a succession of not just district but county, right back to the county council days, planning impacts on that community. Noise, air pollution, and rats, and just general poor situation that they have to put up with, to the point where, as part of their treaty settlement, consideration has been given to relocating that community. So, in my view, there is a direct comparison with the District Health Board as to why we should be not only listening to Te Arawa, but having them contribute to the decision-making process. Ngāpuna have had reports done by APR 20 years ago, so we have been listening to them, but what has been done? They go backwards, and actually the noise provisions under the new district plan are less, will have further negative impacts on that community. So, Your Worship, from that perspective, I think if anyone has an issue with the model that's being proposed today, then they should take a hikoi off to Parliament. And I say that with all sincerity. It's Parliament that recognised the treaty in legislation. It's Parliament that provided the provisions in the Local Government Act that are less than prescriptive and force us into a position of making a judgment call on the requirement that we must permit iwi contribution to the decision-making process. So pretty much that's the end of my rant on this matter. I fully support the recommendation.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I've listened to the debate this morning, and I've listened with councillors to the debate over the last year, in actual fact. And this is the future, coming ready or not. This is the future. And I do want to thank Te Arawa for dragging this council into the future. For me, it's very clear that this is about fairness and justice. Fairness and justice for Te Arawa. If any member of the public was to ask each and every councillor and the mayor around this table, do the issues that Te Arawa bring before this council, are they given the same weight of consideration as any other issue? And I can tell you the answer would be a big resounding fat no. They are not given the same weight of consideration as any of the other issues. And if any councillor was to say, yes, they do get the same weight of consideration, that would be a lie. How do I know? Because I sit at this council table. I hear the derogatory remarks, the put-downs for Te Arawa, the undervaluing of Te Arawa tikanga, Te Arawa's worldview. I sit and I hear that, as many of the councillors do themselves. It is disrespectful, it is shameful, and Te Arawa have given us an opportunity to have their help and assistance to guide good decision making. That is what this model is about. I don't know all the answers, and I'm not ashamed to say I don't, but it would be shameful for us to sit here and say that we do not want your help and guidance to make better decision makings. That to me would be shameful. This is not the first time. This is not the first time that I have sat on a council as an elected member when the same issues and the same disrespect were being accorded iwi Māori in this area. I was an elected member of the Bay of Plenty Regional Council some years ago. And in there, the former mayor of Rotorua showed the true leadership that we are seeing from our current mayor in Rotorua. He said to me at that time, this cannot continue. Māori must have a voice around the table. And of course, he did take the leadership that was required, and we see wards now on the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. I vote with pride today for this. I support the Te Arawa proposal. This is about going forward. This is about making sure that everybody's voice is respected. That if you don't have a worldview of half the citizens of this city, then you will at least have someone on there who can give you the support and guidance to make good decisions. This is about taking everybody along with us. This is not about leaving anybody behind. All over the country, councils are grappling with this. This is nothing new, but we have an opportunity today to show true leadership. Leadership is not a popularity contest. John Keeney told me that. Our current mayor knows that as well. And so I want to congratulate the councillors today who will know that leadership is about shared responsibility and about taking action and doing the right thing at the right time. Now is the time, we are the people, and this is our day. Kia ora tātou.
Is there any other councillor wishing to, Councillor Weber and then Councillor McVicker?
Thank you, Worship. So through the submission process, we've had many alternative suggestions have been put forward. The Pro-Democracy Society have put forward their model without consultation with Te Arawa and think we should go back to their drawing board. Having said that, as has been said by other speakers this morning, this is our time to make decisions on all the submissions that have come for us, and that's what the submission process is about, is us coming through and making modifications. So I'm comfortable with what is being proposed today. A number of submitters have suggested Māori wards, and that of course we know can't be decided on until 2017. But who knows what will happen then? I suggest that we could be going through exactly the same process as we are now. I feel like we've got a great big sledgehammer hovering over our collective heads, about to come down on us if we don't accept exactly the pro-democracy or the Te Arawa proposal. And it's exactly. The threat being that if council doesn't do exactly what we want, we're off to court and it will cost the ratepayer money. And frankly, this process has already cost the ratepayer a lot of money. And I've never known us as council to have actually so many legal opinions in my life. What I observed through the submission process, that all of the younger people who spoke supported the Te Arawa proposal. They recognised the need for it. Te Arawa, Pākehā, recent immigrants, and we can, all of us think of Samantha White and Martin Evans, who thought really thoroughly about it and endeavoured to bring a really different and thoughtful perspective. The submission process also highlighted the large number of young, educated and articulate Māori in Rotorua. There's always been gifted and intelligent Māori, but unless they're given the chance to be involved in political opportunities, things will stay the same. So it is our time to lift the lid on that so-called glass ceiling. We have been accused of making a big fat mess, and now it's our chance to clean it up. But I would say, actually, there was a festering sore, and we've merely lifted the scab off the top, and all the pus is oozing out. You can see I like very picturesque analogies.
Okay.
This picture reflects the arguments for us about being one, without recognising and acknowledging a Māori worldview that has never been perceived, but has always been put forward by Pākehā, that the we are one concept. For while most of us, and I just want to correct, I am Pākehā, though people think I'm Māori at times, and that's nice. But the reality is that for most of us, life might have its difficulties, but we feel relatively accepted and safe in our world. But for many Māori, they see our racism and we don't. And I have to illustrate that when I was first married to my husband, we went to rent a house and he'd send me in and I'd say, why do I have to go in? And he'd say, because they'll be better to you and they think you'll pay the rent. And that's true. And it's sad that someone had to accept that that was their reality. Of course, things have changed now and we all grow up. But the reality is I've learned to understand that that is different. Māori don't want to be separate, but they do want a true partnership. And I think that is what I'm looking for today. So I'd encourage you to show strength and fortitude and don't look at the sledgehammer. Just ignore it.
Do we have anybody else wishing to have a debate? Councillor McVicker, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to provide an alternative worldly view to my good friend here. First and foremost, I'd point out that 12 months ago, the people of Rotorua collectively rejected this very same proposal. This proposal might have been changed slightly at this point of time, but in general, the message and the issues were the same then as they are today, I believe. And you may recollect that 68% of a poll rejected it. Today, I certainly sense that the pendulum has swung, not necessarily because people have changed their opinion, but more so because of the concerted effort by council to push through what they believed is appropriate for our city. I reluctantly will bring up the fact that the whole statement of proposal issue was certainly biased. I don't think there was any argument about that. We saw the spin machine working away busy for council. We have seen legal positions. We haven't seen a third alternative position, which I think might have resolved a few issues. It goes on, and I have to add the expenditure that has gone from council towards funding this whole exercise. I shudder to think at the end of the day what it will be. And when you think about it, it's our ratepayers' funds that are being spent to fight the cause. Combined with that, we've had the accusations of predetermination, conflict of interest, closed minds, and on top of that, coercion from people for us to resign from the society. So there's been a lot of things happening, a lot of pressure on all of us, and I just want to reflect on the fact that, hey, there have been some areas that have not been welcomed by many, but I guess we need to go through that process in this current debate. I could go on about various issues, but I'd just like to highlight 2 points that I do struggle with. During the hearings, and I have to acknowledge I learned a lot about Te Arawa during the hearings, But I did get a bit frustrated with the ongoing comments about the grievances and the entitlements, which today in New Zealand, I think the average Kiwi bloke has really had enough of the ongoing grievance claims. And I like the comment, look to the future, let's not look backwards. I would just like to spell out very clearly that what I learned from the hearings is that there is no legal requirement of the council, either under the Treaty of Waitangi or the Local Government Act, to provide such accommodation to Maori as we are doing at this point of time. Just because other councils may have some similar proposals working that we are looking at doesn't mean to say that we have to follow suit. There's no requirement there. But the other more perplexing one for me, I've always struggled with the fact that this council has in the past been well represented by Maori. Currently 3, previous years more. And I struggle with the fact that when you say they are here to represent Te Arawa, and you were told no, they are not. And if I was one of the 3, I'd be somewhat insulted. And when you dig in further, you're told that because they were not nominated in the first place and voted on by Te Arawa, they consequently are not seen to be representing Te Arawa. I struggle with that. Why doesn't Te Arawa at the next elections put up 3, 6, 10 candidates nominated by Te Arawa and voted on by Te Arawa and the general public? As we heard during the hearings, many Pākehās voted for 3 or many of the majority of the 3 of the Maori councillors that we have. So I really struggle with the fact that we can't get past that position, and Te Arawa are insistent on having their own representation. If they want their own representation, put your hand up at election time, is my answer. Regarding the modified version of the proposal, I have struggled with that likewise because I see it just as a cosmetic change, shifting the goalposts. What one could say at the end of the day is, why don't we just have one council meeting? Because everything is going to be redebated, regurgitated, as has been pointed out. The change in delegation, I don't believe is going to have that much of an impact. Finally, I just have to say that this proposal, I sense, will fly today. It will not get the support of the majority of the people in Rotorua, I believe. I would very much like to see one law for all in our country, not the separate issues that we are seeing today. And I say roll on the next election. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McVicker. I have to just advise that your criticism of the statement of intent, statement of proposal, brings staff who drafted the statement of proposal into disrepute. That was an objective statement of proposal drafted by council staff, not politicians. Just
Madam
pointing that out.
Chair, I understand where you're coming from, but I would point out that there has been so much criticism, not necessarily for me, but letters to the editors, the works, highlighting the very fact that it was biased. I'm just quoting what the people are saying.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought this might be a rather timely time to speak. I just want to make something very clear. That myself and other Māori councillors here have no right to represent Te Arawa. We may be Te Arawa, but we were not elected onto this council only by Te Arawa or specifically to represent Te Arawa. We were elected onto this council to represent the whole of the community. We've sworn an oath for that and we will continue to do that. So I want to make that very clear, because why? Why are we categorising people by what they look like? And I'm sorry, but I am not going to be categorised or segmented or isolated into a spot where I am only what I look like, what I dress like, what I talk like, what I think like. And please, I encourage everyone else to stop such segmentation thinking. Look around this room. Look around your own homes. That is partnership in its finest. That our families, our cultures have come together for many generations now. That is what we are trying to find here, a partnership. That we can actually say to Māori, you will be part of this partnership. Change is scary. Change is scary, and that's what we are facing. And through these submissions, and reading all the submissions and hearing the people, something has become very clear to me. There is no us or them. Eventually you hear enough, you read enough, you see enough, you experience enough that you realize there is no us or them. There is we. And as soon as you realize that, as soon as you get rid of these imaginary things, like spin doctors, I've never actually met one myself, I'm not sure what they look like, I hope they don't spin too fast. These imaginary things that we put in our mind that help explain to us what's going on because it's so different. And I beg of you, have faith, have trust, have courage. A marriage is never always going to be perfect, not married yet, hopefully one day, but from what I can see, a marriage is never going to be perfect. You are going to have times where you don't always agree. And a partnership is not about being on a parallel with other people. It's not about needing to be in the exact same direction. It's about finding, as Councillor Stewart here said, the common denominator. And our common denominator with Council in Te Arawa always has been and always will be Rotorua. The we. The people, the land, our environment. There is no us or them. There is only we. And one of the other things that has come out is historically we haven't done that well. And we've accepted that, we've acknowledged that. It's because we threw too little at too much. And now we're finally in a point, we are in a breaking point, and this is what this is, and this is why it's so scary. Because we have never been in this situation before. People all over the country are trying to find out how do we have more effective Māori representation. And the truth is, we don't know. As a country, we don't know. We have Māori wards, but is that effective Māori representation? I will tell you right now, we are leading the world. Let's stop looking at success at only a local level. Let's free our minds to realise what this opportunity actually is, where we can free the world and say this is how Indigenous people should be treated. In partnership, side by side. Not leading from the front, not leading from the back, not pushing in any direction, but leading side by side together. Tātou tātou. I better actually read these notes. So yeah. Anyway, I guess in summary, there is always going to be a bright side and a dark side, and throughout this process we have seen the dark side, and I did want to mention that my colleagues to my right here in the Pro-Democracy Society are not bad people. They are not bad people, and it's been saddening seeing the threats, not only to myself and to other people, but why are we letting ourselves sink so low? Let's rise above that. Let's stop these personal attacks, because I'm telling you, they are not bad people. They, just like everyone else, have their own views. And that's part of us as leaders needing to have an open mind, is to have our own views but respect enough the other views. Imagine if we fought as hard to understand than we do to try divide. So let's please start looking at this as a we. Start looking at this as what can we do together, because it really is and always will be tātou tātou. Kia ora.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Tapsell. Is there any other councillor that wishes to speak? Councillor Sereng.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Tanya, for your words at the end, because it has been a very difficult time for all councillors and a very difficult time for the community. And it has saddened me enormously to see the divisions that have happened unnecessarily. So I believe in a partnership with Te Arawa. I believe in a partnership with all Māori. And one of my big questions is how do we, if we go down this track, how do we actually partner with these 60% of the Māori population that are not represented by Te Arawa? So that's a huge concern for me, is that other portion of Māori who live in our district who will not be in the same canoe as Te Arawa. So I've had an open mind all along, and I learnt a lot through the submissions, and I thought there was some very constructive and very good ideas put forward on how we might have a real working partnership. The problem for me is, without a doubt, is people sitting at our table who are appointed and have the same powers as elected people. That's the crunch, the guts of my problem. So I believe we haven't explored some of those options put forward by other submitters enough. I believe we could come up with a better solution. I want to talk about the health board, because I was on the health board for one term, and the appointees there. The difference there, of course, is they are appointed by the Minister of Health, and they are appointed there because of their skill, not necessarily in health, but it can be accounting, it can be a lot of reasons. So that's a little bit different than what we're talking about here. And the Regional Council, of course, as Mary Pickett pointed out, had no Māori representation at the table at all. It was all European. And so they had to do something, and what better way than to establish the 3 Māori wards that were established. And that gave them the balance at the table that was required. So I cannot go along with the motion number 3. And I'd like to say I could, but I can't. So I must speak against the motion.
Councillor Hunt?
It took great courage after 20 years for the Te Arawa Standing Committee to recognise that the relationship with Council was not working. And it also took courage to ask, is there a better way? And I think especially courage was required when Te Arawa remained dignified in the face of some of the submissions that came through from the public. For those that have spoken vociferously about the dividing this community, they have been the very ones that have been, by and large, the ones creating this division and fanning the fire out in the public. They've raised fear about a special interest group assuming disproportionate power while actually modelling that behaviour themselves. They've continued to create disharmony where there is none, and they've continued to attempt to dictate terms beyond the scope of the submission process. And they're still trying to control the outcome and behave as if they deserve special rights. They've raised the spectre of loss of control, perceived loss of power, and they promote a narrow-minded version of democracy on their terms. I'm saddened by the vitriol and the misinformation and the fear whipped up. I'm saddened by comparisons to Hitler, to apartheid, and to Baltimore. I'm astounded at the lengths of disruption and discrediting of due process that some people have stooped to, including the veiled threats of dire consequences if we choose not to follow the dogma trotted out as democracy. I struggle with the dominant Pākehā belief that perpetuates privilege and the token acceptance of cultural diversity, and the expectation that at some point assimilation will happen and the living Indigenous culture will just be forgotten and fade away. I don't know what world some people are living in. I live in a world where we have more to gain than to lose from this proposal. I have a world where partnership is an active, ongoing, valuable and well-recognised ability for us to reach common ground. I live in a world where a better future is the goal. A world where cultural diversity is our strength, not our weakness.
A world where the future aspirations of tangata whenua are intrinsically linked with the aspirations of our community for a more prosperous future. I take my responsibility as an elected member seriously. I've listened to all points of view, and I'm making what I believe in my heart is the right decision, even if it's not popular with everyone. There are many worldviews. I recognise the Māori worldview can work and does work successfully with the Pākehā worldview. And I believe the modifications we have made to this proposal meet in part some of the concerns expressed by the submitters. And so on that note, I heartily support the modified Te Arawa Partnership proposal.
Thank you. We will assume the same respect for all speakers. Councillor Bentley, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A lot of what I was planning on saying has already been said by Councillor Sarank and Councillor McVicker. However, I do firmly believe that we have to have a closer working partnership with Te Arawa and all Māori. I'm just not sure that this is the right format. I look at the success that for example, the Lakes Community Board has with its influence at this very same table, and the responsibility that they have as they're serving their Lakes community people extremely well and coming up with some very, very good ideas, which as full council we all listen to, and usually they get their way. And that's great. However, whenever you give something for nothing, it loses all value. And every one of us sitting around this table, excluding the council officers, they've worked damn hard to get there, and they've, in a lot of cases, invested a lot of money, time, and they are appointed, or they voted on the understanding that they're going to represent the opinion of the majority of the people that vote. And I feel that we're losing sight of that goal of what council should be and could be. And I've said enough.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've actually read every single one of these 1,876 submissions. Excuse me, Madam. Can I please have the chance to speak uninterrupted for once in this council chamber? I have for 5 days listened with respect to all 200 plus verbal submissions. I applaud and congratulate the submitters and those who put so much work and effort into making this council aware of their views. I applaud all of them without reservation. I'm very disappointed at the conduct of this council in this matter and the way that it has gone out supposedly to consult with the people. I'm even more disappointed that when I actually sit down and objectively analyse to try and find out what is the right decision to make here, I find out that in reality there are 929 submitters who've submitted in favour of the proposal. There are actually 857 who have submitted against it, and another 1,370 people who have signified in a petition that they don't like it either. And I have to say to myself, it is blatantly clear that we have an almost 50-50 split in this community as to whether this proposal is right or whether this proposal is wrong. I have done my best, as is my duty, to bring to this council's attention the fact that I had grave concerns at the format of this proposal and the legality of this proposal. I have done my best to have this council amend it so that it could not be challenged. so that it could go out in a format that everyone could agree on. Was I listened to? No. I was no more listened to than Te Arawa's ever been listened to. Anyone who sat through these hearings and who actually listened with their ears instead of their mouths would have actually come to the conclusion that Maori, and Te Arawa in particular, have been appallingly treated by this council over many, many years. If you actually listened to what Justice Smith actually had to say in the Environment Court, he wasn't just speaking about consulting with Maori. He was criticising this council for failing to listen to its people, all of its people, and failing to consult with its own Maori Advisory Board. What was wrong with this council? What was wrong with this council is it didn't listen. So here we are at a scenario where I agree wholeheartedly. Te Arawa must have a much greater say in this council. But there are legal ways to do it, and there are questionably legal ways to do it. The correct legal way to do it, and the correct legal mechanism to do it, is provided for in the Electoral Act. Maori wards. Before we sat down to this process, I was dead against any concept of Maori seats in Parliament, dead against Maori wards. Why? Because my ancestors have been fighting for thousands of years for democracy. And they hold it sacrosanct, and they've lived and they've died for it. It is held by my ancestors with just the same regard that Te Arawa have for their lands and their beliefs. So we come to a scenario now where I have to say to myself, what is the right thing to do here? We formed the Pro-Democracy Society, and yes, I was instrumental in forming that, because I believe this council does not listen to people, and I believe this council must be made to listen to all of its people. And I also believe that this council must be made to obey the law, not try and bend the law to suit its purposes. I was instrumental because I had doubts in the way the law was being applied in this case. I convinced the other members of the Pro-Democracy Society that we should take advice from the best legal brain we could lay our hands on. We didn't go and say, find us a reason to stop this. We said, we have concerns that this is not being done correctly in accordance with the law. Are our concerns justified, or are we paranoid? We have read the response that came back from Dr. Andrew Butler. And for those of you who don't know who Dr. Andrew Butler is, you probably all saw him on TV last night. He is the very senior barrister who, a well-educated lawyer who's fighting for the right to die, has entrusted with a record world-breaking case, as far as New Zealand is concerned, for the right to be allowed to die in peace at her own request. That is the lawyer who's given the opinion. Has this council listened to it? No. Not at all. It has gone out to the usual lawyer it uses, who, with respect, is a provincial lawyer, and even I shoot, with respect,
Point
of
order.
With respect, I have to say, I have issues with his
Kent,
legal argument.
your time is up. We've given you 2 extra minutes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will conclude.
Do you can bring it to a close.
Okay, I will conclude by saying I have grave concerns what's happening. The way forward is Maori wards, and I will give that why 100% support. That is what Te Arawa needs, because it's going to get round this table and it's going to find, like I have found, that even if you're a councillor, you're not listened to.
Are there any other councillors that wish to have their view? Councillor Maxwell? All right, Councillor Gould? No. Speak.
The Rotorua Lakes Council proposed Te Arawa Partnership model has divided this community. It's done a lot of harm, which is going to take a huge number of years to repair. All councillors and the mayor have a responsibility for the community of Rotorua, tato tato. Treat everyone as one. Rotorua is a multicultural society. Engage with all Maori. The fact is that Maori wards cannot be decided by this council 2013-2016, but can be decided by the council elected in 2016-2019 for the 2019 election. We have 35 maraes around the Rotorua district. I find it's going to be very difficult to select 14 people from those 35 maraes when past history may intervene in some of the nominations. The Maori need to be around the full council table, not just around a committee table. I've attended 7 out of the 12 council meetings, which for the public, called for by the council for the residents of Rotorua, have listened to all but 6 of the verbal submitters. That was when I was talking to a group of Korean people about the benefits of Rotorua. Submitter 1055 spoke very well for Te Arawa. And what just number of submitters mentioned a partnership between Maori and Rotorua Lakes Council would benefit the whole of the Rotorua district. These are submitters 1241 to 1318, 1320 to 1348. But to me, what about the other non-Te Arawa Maori? They have just as much right as everybody in Rotorua. I note comments by other submitters disturbed by the way the councillors tried to push this proposal through. Submitter 1084, TASC set up in 1993, devised council. Submitter 1085, questions heavily biased towards the Te Arawa Partnership. Submitter 1102, do not want unelected people on council making decisions that affect me. Submitter 1104. The submitter 1810, will you provide other opportunities to consult with non-Te Arawa Maori? That submitter was a former council member of this council, and submitter 1714 voted no. Again, you should look at who those submitters were. What I suggest happens is that if the Te Arawa Standing Committee is reappointed, that they need to elect their own chairperson, not have the Mayor of Rotorua as a chairperson, have the ability to elect their own chair, and have the ability to control some of their agenda items relevant to the Maori, not just be dictated to by this particular council. That may be of more benefit than being around a couple of committees where they can get the views of all the Maori people discussed in one room.
Gould. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would you let me know when the 4 minutes comes up? I'd like to do something appropriate later. I want to support this modest motion. It's modest, as Keith Garrett pointed out to us in the submissions. And we might be looking at certain areas of it. I support it because it is the right thing to do. Many people who came in the submissions said exactly that. It's the right thing to do. And for me personally, we've had to wait a whole year. May this time last year, we had a confidential meeting in this chamber here, and soon as it finished, Councillor McVicker, like a rat up a drain pipe, shot out there, took the papers to the media, and they saw it even before Te Arawa saw it. It was confidential, But you'd already gone out the door before it even been collected. But
No
nō reira,
debate.
that's what happened. But actually, Councillor McVicker, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for doing this. You woke Te Arawa up. They were asleep. This is the biggest issue they've ever participated in. Thank you very much. And then as co-leader of the Rotorua Pro-Demolition Society or something, some name like that, they set up the group. The secretary was running it. The chairperson did the odd media statement, but the secretary was running it. Then, just like anything, the loyalties that Councillor McVicker showed fell apart. They're arguing with each other now, firing bullets at one another through the media. Well done, Councillor McVicker. I wanted to, like Councillor Kent and every other councillor, I've read every submission in there. We've done that and highlighted. I just want to touch on some of them because, and I know we don't have a lot of time to go through everything, but some that stood out. The Te Arawa proposal that Arapeta put forward was just excellent. And huge support came in. The Minister of Maori Development, Te Ururoa Flavel, took time out to come. He's a ratepayer. He has family here. He belongs to one of the main tribes of Te Arawa, Ngāti Rangi Wewehi. Aroha mai, aroha mai. And then we also had a former MP, Ian McLean, came forward. Excellent submission, and we want to thank Ian also. He's helped smooth a lot of things out after the Rotorua debacle out there. And he put up some slides. Don't be like Westminster, the Capitol Hill, Pretoria. Yeah, I remember those slides. The Bay of Plenty Regional Councillor sent in a submission supporting us. Great stuff. We pay rates there too. And I want to commend Darren Walsh from the Chamber of Commerce supporting us, speaking strongly in favour. Numerous hapu and iwi Māori Trust, even early childhood kohanga reo came in. Little tamariki sang waiatas here. That was brilliant. I've already commented about our respected kaumātua and koike, but again I'll repeat, under the tremendous leadership of Sir Toby Curtis and Anaru Rangi Heuia, Te Ariki Morehu, Aramakaraka. And I want to make mention of, we've had 5 days of submissions here. The beautiful Virko sisters have been sitting through everything, humble, dignified. I want to thank them all for coming in here and taking the time. And the hurt you must have felt when you heard we're just another interest group. Wow.
Your time is near.
Oh, another 5 minutes to go. Ooh. I just want to touch quickly on the youth. Some of the most excellent presentations I heard. Anna Morrison, Mariah Pomana, Potaua, Renee Ritete, and Karen Waka speaking like Formula late Maureen Waka. She spoke so beautifully in here. And Tamati Coffee. But I also want to thank the non-korero mō ngā Pākehā who came and supported. Stuart Edward said nothing to fear, everything to gain. Keith Garrett, modest.
Your
Samantha
time.
White, a young,
Sorry.
only been here 8 years. 1 minute to go. I did say to let me know at the end. So with those few words, we've had a tremendous support. Te Arawa e tu. Oh, Te Arawa e! Oh, Te Arawa e! Oh, ko te whakariki! Ko te whakariki! ki. Tuku o mai ki api. Tuku o mai ki ata. Kia eke, ki runga, ki te pai pai, poto, au, mai tā whiwhi. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. It- Point of order. Thank you from the floor. It is noted. It is noted. Councillor Sturt, do you wish to have a right of reply?
Oh, after that performance, absolutely.
Oh,
Madam Chair, just listening to my colleagues who spoke as eloquently as many of the submitters, and your last submission, Councillor Maxwell, I too were delighted. I think Te Arawa and Māori in general are in safe hands with the young people that came before us, both Māori and non-Māori. The young guy from Taupo who was at John Paul College, a superb submission. However, I could go through each of you and what you highlighted, but I think at the end of the day, what we want to build is a strong partnership based on trust, based on understanding, and based on, I think, what Councillor Hunt said, and many others said, it's the right thing to do. I just want to leave you with one submission. As one of them in the poll that Councillor Kent said he read and I read, this person didn't front us, but they wrote in their submission, and I want to read it to you. And this is the closing paragraph. My submission to you is this: be bold, do the right thing, set a precedent if that's what it takes. Have the courage, have the foresight and the will. What is good for Te Arawa is good for you, and is good for me, and good for Rotorua moving forward in the true spirit of tātou tātou. Kia ora.
thank you. I'm now going to put the motion to the vote. All those in... We'll note the division. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Division called for?
All in favour?
All in favour? Contrary?
So, Your Worship, those who voted for the motion, Councillor Donaldson, Councillor Hunt, Councillor Maxwell, Councillor Rokawa Tate, Councillor Sturt, Councillor Tapsell and Councillor Weber. Those who voted no, Councillor Bentley, Councillor Gould, Councillor Kent and Councillor Soring. And, of course, Your Worship, voting for.
Carried 8-5. Now it is time to refocus because we have 4, 5 and 6 to cover now, and if we could just recollect our thoughts, and JP, if you could lead us into staff recommendation 4.
Thank you, Your Worship. As I mentioned earlier, the change of the O&M committee to recommendatory leaves the audit and risk, which was a subcommittee, reporting or recommending to another recommendatory body. So what's been proposed here today and why we've separated it out, it wasn't part of the original Te Arawa proposal, but is a consequential change to have audit and risk report to Council.
I'll move, Your Worship.
I'll second, Your Worship.
Moved, sorry, Councillor Donaldson, seconded Councillor Rokawa Tate. Is there any discussion? There appears to be none. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Carried.
I move, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Moved Councillor Rotorua, seconded Councillor Kent. Would you like to speak to this, JP?
Oh, no, don't. No, he already has.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He covered this off in his staff report. So I'm going to, does anyone wish to speak to this? Councillor Wepper?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I am looking forward to that report coming back to us. I think it's really important that we think carefully about this, because I don't believe that we need to have a Māori commissioner on every hearing, in my opinion, because it is relevant in some situations but not necessarily in others. And so it's just finding a meaningful way to have people included in the right place. And of course, naturally, I think it's the law now that you have to be a trained commissioner anyway. And I also just wanted to say that when we were going through our district hearings, at the time and place that Tarrant asked for our Māori Commissioner to be present, Mr. Antoine Coffin, it was actually very useful to have him there and involved. So I'm looking forward to that report and to weigh up everything and just to have it in the right place, because I know that there might be a few developers that are concerned that for some reason might hold the process up, and we just want to make sure that we allay those fears, concerns, and just make sure we've got it all really well sorted out. Thank you.
Debate.
I know, just a question, Madam Chair. When that report comes forward, will that give clear parameters in terms of when tangata whenua are involved? That's why I expect, but particularly when the district plan is reviewed, because that's where I believe tangata whenua should have a trained, qualified commissioner during that process.
It's a statement, Councillor Stewart, rather than a point of clarification. I don't think it. Can you assure us that the report will give clear parameters? Thank you, Jean-Paul. Any further debate on that item? I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. That wasn't a contrary, was it, Councillor Kent? I'm not sure. Yeah, sorry, I just saw your pen go up, and right.
Happy to second, Your Worship.
Wish to open this point up for debate? Councillor Wepper?
I think this is actually a really sensible thing to do, because we did hear a lot of submissions who were really concerned about cost, and I have to say I wonder myself with the proposal of 14, and if you're going to have Mata Waka involved, 15 people, how you're going to sort of pay everyone, or how it's all going to work. And I'm sure that Te Arawa can work that all out. But having said that, I think we need to put a limit on our budget, because it can be a huge cost. And I think this is reasonable when I think of what we allocate to other groups. I think this is a fair and reasonable way, and it gives clarity and certainty. And I think that's a useful way, and I'm sure they'll be able to work that out. And I don't want to tell people what to do, but we do need to know that how it's done is in a clear and transparent way. So I think that's the other thing. I'll be making sure everything's clear and transparent, as we do endeavour to try with all of our council operations. Is that most of the time, unfortunately, a lot of people don't take any notice of us, but we will keep trying. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, having confidence in the process is really important, but Madam Chair, the 250,000 that is currently, or is detailed in that motion, that was thereabouts the cost of the existing Te Arawa Standing Committee annually, was it not?
Would you like to, that's a point of clarification, John Paul?
Your Worship, I believe in the statement of proposal we said it was approximately 200,000, and that included a high level of internal resourcing that we'd estimated the value of, so slightly more.
Wishing Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We need to talk to the former members of the TASC, because we can't afford for another mistake like Rotorua to happen. You know, we don't have unlimited money to go to the Environment Court all the time and defend our position. It's sad with what's happened, but let's go forward now. We've made the decision today. Let's make it a successful proposal.
In effect, the Te Arawa Standing Committee does not exist. So we won't be talking to them, but we'll be moving to meet the intent of this motion. Does anyone else wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, no, I'm happy with this, and like what Councillor Wepper said, having a figure there, because there were some submitters that just were throwing $1 million figures around all the time. So please have that emphasised in huge black print or something so that it is clear. I'm pleased about this motion.
To be no more debate, I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. I'm just going to take the opportunity for a few concluding remarks. You'll note I didn't speak in the debate, but today we've reached a democratic conclusion to a process that for me began at the Pōwhiri at Tamatakapua, when I announced there that we would be engaging with Te Arawa to find an enduring partnership. That was all that was said. I also want to say that during the election campaign, I campaigned on a partnership with iwi, a partnership with business, and a partnership with the community. We could have chosen the easy way, as Judge Smith recommended in 2012, that we simply audit the Te Arawa Standing Committee. We could have reviewed the Te Arawa Standing Committee along with all other committee when we were elected. We went through a lengthy process of reviewing committees and agreeing that we needed 2 substantive committees. Instead, we chose not the easy way, but we chose to ask Te Arawa to propose a way forward, and that was 17 months ago. We suspended the Te Arawa Standing Committee, and in effect they lost their job and became the working party. I want to thank them for their diligent and mature and above all respectful manner in which they've worked and kept their dignity. On December the 18th, rather than ram through a preferred model, Council voted to embark on a quasi-judicial special consultative process. That's all we voted for, and that process had to have a preferred model. That is the democratic process. I called for that to involve all of the community, to have their say on that statement of proposal. The community has now spoken, and as many councillors have mentioned today, the submissions have been profound. They have been deep and they have been heartfelt, and they have been the expression of 2 world views, and actually 2 world views that collided. And we have to make sense of the way forward for our council. This, though, was participatory democracy in action, and that's the sort of leadership that I stood for, and I will continue to lead a council to find that way forward, to raise the confidence of those that were opposed to this model, so they believe and don't feel frightened and don't feel anxious that we're going to give to a minority a view that is going to hold our entire district to ransom. That is a nonsense. What is good for Te Arawa is good for Māori and is good for all of the citizens of Rotorua. I want to thank all submitters. It was challenging, as many of you said, but we all heard something different. And the door was always open to go to the Chief Executive and pose another idea. It was always open. The model was being adapted and thought through as we heard from submitters. I actually understood those submitters who stood for an election in the last election, fought the good fight, and now saw that this may be perceived as an easy ride for Te Arawa. But I think what those submitters failed to acknowledge, back in 2010, this council went through an electoral college voting proposal for the Te Arawa Standing Committee. They were not appointed members. They went through an electoral college process to be elected as the standing members of the Te Arawa Standing Committee. That is another election process. They were not given a free ride. They had to go through a huia iwi process to be elected by the mana whenua, not by Māori, by mana whenua. And that difference seems to have failed to have been easily understood by many councillors. Mana whenua are the people of Te Arawa. My husband is mātāwaka. He doesn't belong here. And people don't seem to understand that. When we talk about a Māori ward, we're talking about people like my husband getting on the Māori ward. That is not active engagement with mana whenua, Te Arawa. And that was the proposal that I said we would go out to find, was an active engagement and participation proposal that was what we received back from Te Arawa. To staff, I want to say, and all of you, thank you for your contribution. Thank you for keeping us safe. Thank you for advising us about the due process of legal boundaries in which we had to act in this committee. Thank you for keeping us well informed and for being professional to the public and also to ourselves. It has not been easy for council staff. I have been very concerned to hear council staff called spin doctors. Council staff took out the SOP, the Statement of Proposal to community meetings. There was criticism that I, as the elected member, didn't go to those community meetings. I can imagine where the centre of focus would have been if I was sitting quietly at those meetings when information sessions, which was all they were given to those interested public who turned up. To councillors, this has not been easy for many of you. I'm actually very proud of all councillors taking the right to debate today. Some have chosen not to debate at council, but to work behind the scenes with the pro-democracy group to shape another point of view. I'm proud of you for speaking today. You've been clear on your view. You put it here clearly today, and we put it to the vote, and no bitterness must be felt. We have been threatened. We've had to watch mistruths and misinformation being promulgated, but I always knew that the real truth would prevail. Councillors took a long-term position, building on the strengths of Mayor Hall 21 years ago when the advisory committee was first established. Many changes have happened in Māoridom since the formation of the Te Arawa Standing Committee. We now have post-treaty settlement entities who wish to be part of this new Te Arawa board so that they can then appoint members to our two committees of council. Council has the right of veto of those appointments, and I've been really alarmed to hear people genuinely ask me, is there capability amongst Te Arawa to participate at 2 committees of council. Too right there is. Too right there is. I'm overawed by the young people, the new thinkers, the new shapers, the new movers, the sort of people that spoke and gave submissions to us. And Councillor Tapsell, when I'm ready to go, my shoes will be ready for you to step into. I was inspired to hear you talk about a cup half full view of Te Arawa. A cup half full about unlocking the potential for our community, for our district. What is good for Māori is good for everybody. Our community today has come of age, and this is a day when the historical account of Te Arawa and their generosity in the formation of this township is on this council record forever, and we're all very proud of that. Now we begin a new partnership, and the new challenge begins. This is not easy. This is not easy. Now Te Arawa have to form the Te Arawa board. That is not our business. And Te Arawa will grab this opportunity and make the most of it, because their future is our future. I just want to finish. You always have 1 or 2 profound submissions that really do affect you when you listen. And for me, it was Kahuariki Hancock, who said, "Mā te whakatau ka mohio. When we're shown, we come to know. Mā te mohio ka marama. When we know, we come to understand. Mā te marama ka ora ai tātou. When we understand, we achieve wellness. We will do this together. Tātou, tātou." I now declare this meeting closed, and thank you for staying on.